Check one. That's the one. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. The ceremony will begin in about 10 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The ceremony is about to begin in about 5 minutes. We kindly ask that you would take your seats and silence all cell phones. Thank you. distinguished guests, please welcome today our Master of Ceremonies for today's event, Secretary and Treasurer of the Department of Laborers, DOL, and Pride, ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Golden.
Distinguished guests, please rise as we welcome to the stage U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Ethan Zorek Green for the singing of the national anthem, as well as Deputy Assistant Secretary Vince McCone for the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "Let us realize the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." Today, we join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which represents our ongoing efforts towards a more perfect union that bends towards justice. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Acting Secretary Sue, honored guests Gerald Bostock and Bill Moore, those watching remotely, and all of our distinguished guests, welcome. We're gathered here today during LGBTQ History Month to honor three extraordinary individuals, Gerald Bostock, as well as the late Aimee Stephens and Donald Zarda. Many of us present today remember June 15th, 2020 with excitement. In a landmark Supreme Court ruling regarding three cases consolidated under the name Bostock versus Clayton County, the court held in a 6-3 decision that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employers from discriminating against workers due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. Prior to this, employment protections for millions of LGBTQ workers only existed in state and local statutes, failing to protect workers nationwide. This Supreme Court opinion was not an inevitability. This ruling was not guaranteed, nor were the protections that came along with it. When I say this opinion was not an inevitability, I'm mindful that many of those attuned to the Supreme Court might believe I'm speaking to its composition, and the fact that it has not historically nor routinely issued orders expressly upholding the rights of LGBTQ people. I say this opinion was not an inevitability, though, not because of the court's composition, but because none of the actions of Gerald Bostock, Aimee Stephens, or Donald Zarda were guaranteed. Each of these individuals we honor today were ordinary workers who were fired from their jobs they excelled at, and they were only fired because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And each of them made active choices to honor a core aspect of their humanity in a setting where most adults spend a majority of their waking hours at work. With the support of my loving wife, I have decided to become the person that my mind already is. I cannot begin to describe the shame and suffering that I've lived with. Toward that end, I intend to have sex reassignment surgery. The first step I must take is to live and work full-time as a woman for 1 year. At the end of my vacation on August 26th, 2013, I will return to work as my true self, Aimee Australia Stephens, in appropriate business attire. I realize that some of you may have trouble understanding this. In truth, I have had to live with it every day of my life, and even I do not fully understand it myself. I have tried hard all my life to please everyone around me, to do the right thing and not rock the boat. As distressing as this is sure to be to my friends and some of my family, I need to do this for myself and for my own peace of mind and to end the agony in my soul. Through it all, I have learned that life is an adventure, and I would like to believe that the best is yet to come. I hope we can enjoy it together. It is my wish that I can continue my work at RG and GR Harris Funeral Homes, doing what I have always done, which is my best. These are some of the words Aimee Stephens chose to write in a letter addressed to her dear friends and coworkers on July 31st, 2013, while on leave to receive gender-affirming care. 2 weeks later, before she could return to work, her boss notified her by mail that she had been terminated. In his Equal Employment Opportunity Commission affidavit, Aimee's employer noted that there was no other reason for her discharge but for her letter. After being terminated, Aimee, like Gerald and Donald, chose again and again, making decision after decision to stay committed to honoring her own humanity as an LGBTQ person, regardless of the law or her employer's recognition of it. Sitting through depositions and hearings where she was misnamed and misgendered, Aimee persisted for 7 years before the Supreme Court rendered an opinion that she had already long held. Firing her simply due to her gender identity was not just wrong, but illegal. Aimee passed away a month prior to the Supreme Court issuing its opinion in Bostock v. Clayton County. Donald Zarda, too, passed away in 2014 and was unable to see the conclusion of the litigation that began after his employer fired him in 2010. I want to recognize Donald's former partner, Bill Moore, who is with us today on behalf of Donald's family. Bill, along with Donald's sister, Melissa Zarda, spent countless days in court carrying on Donald's case after he passed away. I also want to recognize Aimee Stephens' widow, Donna Stephens, who stood by Aimee's side until the very end. Unfortunately, she could not be with us today, but we recognize the important role Donna, Bill, and Melissa continue to play in carrying on Aimee and Donald's legacy. Today, we honor Gerald, Aimee, and Donald for their perseverance and dedication. While Aimee and Donald did not get to read the Supreme Court's opinion, the court's opinion did not contain any universal truths that they and Gerald did not already know. Their actions in the face of discrimination and years of litigation, though, has made it clear for all employers nationwide that discrimination because one's sexual orientation or gender identity is illegal. I would now like to offer a moment of silence for our two posthumous honorees commemorated today with white roses laid on 2 chairs at the front of our audience. Today, we intend to make it clear that Gerald, Aimee, and Donald are three individuals that not only didn't deserve to be discriminated against, but deserve to be honored. To do this, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you Pam Karlan. Pamela Karlan is co-director of Stanford Law School's Supreme Court Litigation Clinic and is one of the nation's leading experts on voting and the political process. She has served as a commissioner on the California Fair Political Practices Commission and assistant counsel and cooperating attorney for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and twice as a deputy assistant attorney general in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. On October 8th, 2019, Pam Karlan stood before the Supreme Court as co-counsel for the estate of Donald Zarda, who was a skydiving instructor fired simply due to telling a customer that he was gay. Pam put forth a simple argument on that day. Using her words, when you tell two employees who come in, both of whom tell you they were married to their partner Bill last weekend, and when you fire the male employee who married Bill, and you give the female employee who married Bill a couple of days off so she can celebrate the joyous event, that's discrimination because of sex. The Supreme Court ruling is directly thanks to Pam's work on behalf of Donald Zarda's estate, as well as so many others. While Pam could not be here in person with us today, it is now my pleasure to share remarks Pam prepared for this occasion.
It's an honor to speak with you today. Aimee Stephens, Gerald Bostock, and Donald Zarda each had a job at which they excelled: funeral director, child welfare services coordinator for a court system, and skydiving instructor. And each of them also insisted on their right to pursue that vocation that they loved, while also living authentic lives with the people they loved, some of whom join us today. Aimee, Gerald, and Don had jobs that touched every aspect of the human experience, from early childhood to people's last days, from profoundly thrilling to often sad to potentially life-changing, from thousands of feet above the ground to beneath the earth. Sadly, I never got to meet Don himself. He was fired from the job he loved in 2010. By the time I began working on the case, he had been dead 10 years after a tragic accident. But I did get to know something about Don through his sister Melissa and his partner Bill Moore, who were the executors of his estate. Their commitment to vindicating Don is a tremendous tribute to the brave, imaginative, and joyous man that he was. The decade it took to vindicate Don's claim that Title VII prohibits discriminating against a worker because that worker is gay is a reminder that the persistence of workers insisting on their rights is a cornerstone of fair employment law. Dr. King famously said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. But it does that only when people like Don and Gerald and Aimee put their weight behind bending that arc. It had long been the law that Title VII requires covered employers to judge their employees by the quality of their work and not on the basis of their sex. What the Bostock decision did was apply this simple proposition to claims by gay and transgender workers. One thing we might ask ourselves is why it took so long to recognize what was, in reality, a set of very straightforward arguments. As I thought about how to sum up what Don Zarda has contributed to all our lives, I was reminded of Stephen Spender's poem, The Great Ones, the truly great. It ends this way: near the snow, near the sun, in the highest fields, see how these names are faded by the waving grass and by the streamers of white cloud and whispers of wind in the listening sky. The names of those who in their lives fought for life, who wore at their heart the fire's center. Born of the sun, they traveled a short while toward the sun and left the vivid air signed with their honor. Bill once summed up how Don felt when he was fired. His specific words to me when it happened was, "My wings have been clipped." The Supreme Court's decision and the ceremony today helped to restore those wings. Don fought for the right to pursue his life's work, traveling towards the sun in the highest fields. So today we feed him by adding his name to a wall alongside the names of so many others who also fought for the dignity and equality of all workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Pam for her words today and continued advocacy for the rights of LGBTQ+ workers everywhere. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce one of our distinguished honorees, Gerald Bostock. Gerald Bostock worked as a dedicated child welfare advocate for Clayton County, Georgia, for a decade before he was fired in 2013. Under his leadership, the county won national awards for its work. He received high marks in his performance evaluations, and he was placed in charge of the county's court-appointed Special Advocates Program. In 2013, Bostock joined a gay recreational softball league. After joining the league, he was criticized by someone with significant influence in the Clayton County court system, and he was disparaged for his sexual orientation and his involvement in the league. He was fired from his job in June 2013 for conduct unbecoming of a county employee. His firing left him without health insurance as he recovered from prostate cancer. Gerald Bostock did not set out to become a figurehead for LGBTQ+ rights. Regardless, he remained committed over years of litigation and rulings for and against him. We honor him today for this commitment, and without further ado, it is my honor to welcome to the podium Gerald Bostock.
Thank you all so very much. And good afternoon. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Department of Labor for this great honor and humbly accept on behalf of myself, Aimee Stephens, and Donald Zarda. You know, October has become a significant month. First, it is recognized as LGBTQ+ History Month for me and my partner who is here with me today. It's actually the month Atlanta officially celebrates Pride. And in fact, that was last weekend that we were in Piedmont Park with many friends and other members from our community celebrating. But most importantly, October marks the 4th anniversary of Bostock v. Clayton County. On October 8th, 2019, I proudly stood before the justices of the United States Supreme Court alongside Aimee Stephens and the Zarda family to end LGBTQ workplace discrimination. Our stories were each unique to us, but had that one common thread: workplace discrimination. As already mentioned today, I was employed by Clayton County, which is a metro county just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, advocating for child abuse and neglect victims for over 10 years. And it was a job I loved. It was my dream job. And it was a job I was good at. But in early 2013, I made a decision to join a gay recreational softball league, the Hotlanta League. And the reason I had decided to join was to see if I was up to the challenge. Could I do it physically? Could I do it mentally? Because, as you see, I had cancer and was in my recovery period. Within months, however, that decision didn't go very well for me because I was terminated, wrongfully terminated. Within months of that decision, I had no source of income. I had no health insurance during that time of recovery. And Clayton County's stated reason for termination, conduct unbecoming a county employee. And it's been a devastating experience. And I know I was a victim in all of this, but in reflection, I look back as a child advocate. What message did Clayton County send to those children in that community, especially those that identify as gay, lesbian, or trans? What about the adult gay individuals that we were actively recruiting to become a CASA volunteer in that communique to represent child abuse and neglect victims? And what about the businesses we were enlisting to help financially support the program, whereas, especially when the county wasn't able to do so? The message was loud to me. Their message, Clayton County's message, was, "You are not welcome here." So we carried our case to the United States Supreme Court, along with the Zarda family and Aimee Stephens. And fortunately, before oral arguments, I had the opportunity to have a tour of the building and actually work out that wow moment, because trust me, as you all know from being here, it is a beautiful building, and I truly believe in what it stands for. And walking out after those oral arguments, I felt even more confident that equality would win out. Listening to all the questions and all the well-thought-out responses by Pamela Carlin that we just had the privilege of hearing her speak, I even predicted a 6-3 victory in our favor that day on the steps of the United States Supreme Court building. So then we had to wait. It was a very long 8 months after those oral arguments, but then the opinion was released on June 15th of 2020. And let me tell you, I was elated. It felt like being a kid on Christmas morning, and I still don't think those feelings have totally gone away yet. My case was remanded back to the 11th Circuit, which is Georgia, Florida, and Alabama, and that's where my journey had to continue, because you see, I never actually had a day in court. So we had 2 more years of depositions and discovery. So obviously June has become a significant month, not only for myself, but for the LGBTQ plus community. But you know, I think back growing up, always looking forward to June. You know, it meant that school's gonna be out and swimming pool parties and picnics with family and friends and taking vacations. But now, as a gay adult, I see the month of June in a totally different light. June is officially the kickoff of the Pride season that is celebrated across this country, even though some locations celebrate the actual day on different days, not just in the month of June. But there's also darkness in that month. For me, that dark day fell June 3rd of 2013, the day I was wrongfully terminated. This is a day that is certainly not celebrated by myself or my family, but it does serve as acknowledgement of what I had said from the beginning of my journey, that no one should go to work fearful of losing their job because of who they are, who they love, or how they identify. Then we have June 15th. Now that is a day of celebration across the gay community, and hopefully for many more. During June, we also recognize and remember the anniversary of Stonewall. You know, they do say Pride is not just a parade, it's actually a riot. So again, I'd like to thank the Department of Labor for this tremendous honor. I wish Don and Aimee could have been here with me to celebrate with us, but I know they're here in spirit. As mentioned, Bill is here, and it's my understanding that Donna Stephens is watching this today virtually. So a big shout out to you and your families as well. And again, thank you all for coming and being a part of this very special day.
Thank you very much for your remarks and for all of your advocacy for yourself and for so many people in this room and watching and throughout the country. We cannot thank you enough. It is now my distinct honor and privilege to introduce a lovely LGBTQ advocate and ally, our esteemed Acting Secretary of Labor, Julie Su.
Thank you all so much. And Anthony, thank you for, this is not the first time, it will not be the last, that you, through your leadership, through your, not just your work at the department, but your leadership at Pride at DOL and in our community really serves to make the entire department better. So thank you for that. So good afternoon, everyone. It is a very special day here at the Department of Labor. As we all know, when it comes to advancing civil rights, economic justice, and equity, it really takes a community. So that includes outstanding attorneys like Pam Carlin, who you've heard from already, and also the ACLU, who helped to represent our honorees. And I just wanted to appreciate the work of everybody who took part in this landmark Supreme Court decision. But let me say a special thanks to Gerald Bostock. I had the pleasure of meeting with Gerald and family members of the honorees before this event. And as you heard, Gerald was fired for conduct unbecoming a county employee. Conduct unbecoming. So I want to say to you, Gerald, on behalf of the entire Department of Labor and the Biden-Harris administration, that we honor you with a permanent place in history for conduct becoming a national hero. And to all the family members of the honorees, we celebrate you too. This kind of journey takes days, months, years of patience and dedication and commitment and creativity. And as Anthony said, it does not happen because it's inevitable. It happens because people fight. So thank you for all that you have done. You have made America more just. You have made America more equitable, and you have made America more free. This issue is also close to President Biden's heart. I have heard him say, as I hope you all have, directly to the LGBTQ plus community, especially to transgender kids, that you belong, that you are seen. On his very first day in office, the president signed an executive order on combating discrimination on the basis of gender, identity, or sexual orientation. And that executive order specifically cited to Bostock v. Clayton County. So it is not an exaggeration to say that our honorees have inspired a nation to action. Here at the Department of Labor, we are doing everything we can to make good on the president's promise of putting equity at the heart of everything that we do. In our enforcement, we are unleashing our full power to protect workers, especially the most vulnerable workers, to make sure they get a just day's pay for a hard day's work, to make sure that every worker comes home healthy and safe at the end of the day, and to make sure that every worker has the right to a good job free from discrimination. And we are also empowering workers in our work. This department stands with workers who are organizing, who are exercising their fundamental right to engage in collective action and to demand fair treatment in the workplace. And we are living our values. In June of 2022, I loved getting to raise the pride flag outside the Department of Labor. For the first time in the department's history. And this past June, I got to do that again alongside many of my Department of Labor colleagues. And I was so glad to do it, in part because we are here located on Constitution Avenue in the site of the Capitol, which means that everybody who comes to work or comes to our nation's capital to visit could see very clearly where the Department of Labor stands. And centering equity also extends to the voices that we lift up, the stories that we shine a spotlight on. And that is why we are here today, to draw from the inspiration of our honorees. So I am so thrilled to honor Gerald Bostock, Donald Zarda, and Aimee Stephens into our Hall of Honor. And I want to also note that Aimee Stephens will be the first transgender Hall of Honor person ever in the history of the Department of Labor. So. Gerald, Don, and Aimee stood up for a very basic principle, that no one should have to hide their true and full selves at work. But I want to rewind just a moment to 3 years before the Supreme Court ruled, 3 years before the Supreme Court ruled on the Bostock decision. Back then, more than 25 states allowed a person to be fired on the basis of their being gay, bisexual, or transgender. It was entirely legal to do so. In Gerald Bostock's case, he showed up to work one day and his swipe access card had been cut off. Even in places that did have protections, the protections varied from state to state. And so this Supreme Court ruling changed all of that. It gave us a unified national standard to protect LGBTQ+ people in the workplace. But, as is always the case, we still have much work to do. And that's why, at the Department of Labor, we are not going to stop until we do that work. We are going to make sure that we continue to fight to measure our work by how we have protected and advanced the rights of the most vulnerable individuals in our communities. When Don Zarda was fired, his sister, Melissa, said, quote, "It was a weight that he carried." And today, far too many LGBTQ+ individuals still have to carry that weight when they go to work every single day. In 2023, 38% of LGBT employees say that they've experienced harassment at work. For transgender workers, that number goes up to 90%. So, as I said, we have more work to do. And we're going to measure our progress by how the workers and communities that have been left out for far too long are faring in our economy and in our nation. This is how we ensure that no one gets left out or left behind. And when all people can be their full, vibrant selves at work and outside of work, our country becomes more full and vibrant too. You know, as you've already heard, Gerald, Don, and Aimee did not set out to become the center of a Supreme Court case. They were just great employees doing work that they loved. They didn't ask to be recognized, they didn't ask to be thrust into a years-long Supreme Court battle for justice, but they chose to speak up. And as you've already heard, it takes people speaking up in order to change things and make them better. And in Aimee Stephens' words, she had to muster all the courage that she had. So today, as we induct our 3 new honorees into the Hall of Honor, let's remember to amplify the voices that are too often unheard, and let's channel the courage of Gerald, Don, and Aimee so that we can continue to carry on their work to seek justice and to make history. Thank you all so very much for being here, and I hope that you will join us after the ceremony for in the actual Hall of Honor to see our inductees named. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Acting Secretary Sue, for not only your words, but your continued actions in support of all workers, including and especially LGBTQ+ workers. We will now welcome our honorees and their loved ones, Bill Moore, to receive a gift from Acting Secretary Sue in commemoration of their induction into the Hall of Honor. This now concludes the live stream portion of our program. I would just like to end by thanking you all for attending today and thanking so many people throughout the department, from OPA, Mike Trupo, OPE, Taylor Lord Barnes, all of OSAM, including Vince McCone and Carolyn Angus Hornbuckle, as well as everyone who has helped to put this event together. And again, endless gratitude towards our three honorees, Gerald Bostock, Aimee Stephens, and Donald Zarda. Thank you all, and that concludes the program for today.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you remain seated, please. We like to ask our guests to remain seated, please, as our honorees and the acting secretary make their way over to the Hall of Honor. If you would remain seated until that happens. Thank you so very much. Followed by, we will have ushers to direct your exit row by row. Then you can join us at the Hall of Honor as we unveil a plaque honoring the Bostock plaintiffs, followed by a reception. Thank you so very much.